Hello and welcome to this special edition of Everywoman, brought to you from London. I'm Shuli Ghosh. This week we meet the first woman Muslim in the British Parliament, a staunch defender of women's rights, and stand-up comedy, a male-dominated gig. But can women make it? I'm in the heart of the Asian community here in Brick Lane in East London, and it's here that a champion defender of women's rights first cut her teeth on local politics. Baroness Uddin of Bethnal Green was the first Muslim woman to enter the House of Lords, and she campaigns tirelessly on women's issues. But she took the time to meet me here in her own neighbourhood. Tell me about yourself, because I know that you were born in Bangladesh and you came here when you were 13. What were your early memories?
I think a very grey, hostile Britain is the one that I remember from the early days. I mean, we came into an area which was where there was hardly any Asians, and I went to school with hardly any Asian, young women. And so I think that's my earliest memory.
But have things changed over the years? Do you think that communities are more accepting of immigrants, of people coming in from other countries?
I think that that's been an evolving process about, how Britain or any countries of the world sees immigrants and immigrant populations, and given the nature of immigration, it's an ongoing debate all the time. And I think, you try and live out of that discussion as much as possible. I think what we've done in places like Tower Hamlets and East End of London generally is immigrant communities have made best use of their stay, and I think people like myself have made Britain a home, and we've made it as comfortably as we can. And I think that we've tried to deal with all of the issues arising out of consequences of being an immigrant into this community. It's a very, very interesting area, East London and Tower Hamlet in particular. It has history of migration, specifically settling in over a long period of time. But I think what's been very different is the Bangladeshi communities have seen the kind of changes that would not have been imagined 20, 30 years ago. And I think that Bangladeshi communities 50 years ago, when our forefathers first came, said, we're not going to be moving from here. This is our home. This is where we get comfortable. And as a result, our generations have made sure that the area is not only comfortable for us, but we make the area comfortable for the whole of the community.
Well, paint us a picture. What are these communities like?
I mean, I view, of course, Brick Lane and surrounding areas as a very vibrant society. It's a good multicultural community. Of course, there are pockets of huge deprivation. I mean, you can see that if you look at the area, but nothing in comparison to the picture that I remember 20, 25 years ago. But that is not the case now. I think that there has been good, significant changes in terms of the business communities developing its own reputation, particularly in the catering sector, but also, the community itself have contributed to the regeneration of the area in a way that would have been unimaginable. And I think that this area remains one of the most vibrant and one of the most regenerated. And we are going to be witnessing Olympics happening, and of course that has its own implication in terms of how the area will be impacted. And we've got some of the highest paid executives living on our doorstep, and we've got some of the most prestigious accommodations, but that is not necessarily reflected across the whole population. And I think that's something we've got a lot of work to do still.
Let's talk about your work, because you're very passionate about local politics, about social issues, violence against women, child protection. Why are those important issues to you, and what are you trying to achieve?
when I entered community work, I noticed that housing issues, violence against women, disability provisions were absolutely appalling, and particularly for Asian women, particularly for minority community, because of course I haven't just worked for Asian women, I've worked for any women. This is the Jagonari Women's Resource Centre, first purpose-built Asian Women's Resource Centre in the country, and 3 of us built it, I have to say. History doesn't speak evidently, but that is true. And it was part of a project which was to signal the empowerment of women, and particularly the participation of Bangladeshi women.
1, 2, 3.
He made the sun and the sky so blue. Allah, Allah is the one. Allah is the one. Allah the Creator, the Almighty One.
You were the first Muslim woman in Parliament. What was it like when you were sworn in, when you became a baroness?
Parliament was not a strange a building. It wasn't something that I had no association with. I mean, I'd been an activist in the area since I was 16, and I think that Parliament was, one of the places we often lobbied, so I'd been quite familiar with the building. But of course, I never imagined I'd be in the Lords. That's a different experience.
I, Paula Manzila, Baroness Uddin, do swear by Almighty Allah that I will be faithful and bear true allegiance to Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth, her heirs and successors, according to law. So help me God.
So I think that it was a huge responsibility. I mean, I'm not any longer the only Asian woman or the only Muslim woman. But I was certainly when I went in there first, and I was the youngest, and with a child, breastfeeding, a child. So it was quite a remarkable experience.
But it's an extraordinary achievement. Did you ever think that you would get that far?
We came into politics to genuinely change the situation. I mean, I acquired a small card which says, when I was 16, in fact, down in Brick Lane, the Cooperative Party used to host this protest stall against the fascists, because every Sunday there would be the fascists walking down Brick Lane rampaging. Mr. Ahmed will tell you the story about how they intimidated particularly the business and Asian businesses. And in protest, the labor movement used to hold a stall, and that's how I encountered the labor movement in the beginning. And I bought this card, and I still got it. It says that I changed the world if I could find a babysitter. Of course, I didn't know I was going to end up having 5 children, but I genuinely felt that politics and engaging in the community is about changing situation, and I think that is something I'm very comfortable with.
But why is it that women don't get more involved in politics, and how do you encourage them to become more active?
Labour Party, that is one of our tragedies, that we as a party, we as a movement, I believe, should have been in a stronger position to advocate and engage and involve Asian women, minority women. And it's absolutely a disgrace that we do not have an Asian woman of any party, any political affiliation in the House of Commons.
But do you think there is more Islamophobia? Do you think Islam is misunderstood?
I think I'm not a great historian, but I have some knowledge of what's gone on in the previous centuries, and I think that Islam has always been misunderstood, and I think that Muslim world need to take seriously the influence it seriously has over the West, and I think it doesn't do that. And it's only the other day we were discussing some Arab countries and what they're doing with the Middle East peace process, and I think that there is such a responsibility on the Arabs and the Islamic world to do a lot more to ensure not just that their own backyard is safe, but also that Islam, we fight collectively to assert the positive of, not only Islamic countries, but also Islam itself. And within that, the contribution of women.
So if you could change one thing, what would it be?
I can only talk about it from my own circumstances. And if I was in the labor movement, top of the tree, I would have 30 men and women represented, particularly women. I have to say, it would be 30 women in Parliament instantly. And I think the fact that women have been in Parliament has changed the way women have been perceived and are experiencing their real lives. And I think that would have a huge impact on not only the credibility of the community, but also the nature of society.
More women in politics.
More women everywhere.
She is such an inspirational woman, isn't she? Coming up after the break, time for a smile. Some of Britain's funniest women tell us about the ups and downs of stand-up comedy.